Hi, I'm Dr. Shah. I was the National Lecture Competition winner in 1989, and I'm the Maths Master at Maths School. Now, ready for a new way of doing maths? Word problems in algebra. So we're going to learn to convert the English in a word problem into maths. So if you see is, am, are, that would be an equal sign in mathematical notation. And, some, greater than, longer, heavier, those kind of things are a plus in mathematical notation. Minus, less, difference, less than, below, those sort of things would be a minus sign. Multiply by, product, and of are all multiply by signs. Divide, shared, per would be a divide by sign. Times itself is another way of saying squared, so that would be square. And sometimes you'll see consecutive numbers. Well, consecutive numbers, if we call the first of our consecutive numbers n, then the second of the consecutive numbers would be n plus 1. So n would be an unknown number, n plus 1 would be the next number on from that. Similarly, if it said, instead of saying consecutive numbers, if it said an even number, and we didn't know what the even number was, we would call it 2n, the 2 in front of it, making sure that it's even, because whatever n is, it will be multiplied by 2 to give us an even number. And if we wanted an odd number, we would call it 2n plus 1. Make it even, add 1, that will ensure it's odd. And if we wanted consecutive odd numbers, then if our first odd number was 2n plus 1, then to get to the next odd number, we'd have to add another 2 to that, so it'd be 2n plus 3 would be our consecutive odd numbers. You don't have to do it as 2n plus 1, 2n plus 3. You can also do it as 2n minus 1 and 2n plus 1. So in other words, subtracting 2 from that one to get your other odd number. Okay, so let's move on to some examples where the question is written in English and we have to convert it into mathematical equations before we can solve it. So, slightly more involved example this time. Fred is more popular than Pete. Together they have 66 friends. Fred has 6 fewer than the square of the number that Pete has, and we need to find out how many friends Fred has. So this is slightly more complicated, so I'm going to start off by defining some variables. I'm going to say the number of friends that Fred had is called f. And the number of friends that Pete has is called p. Okay, so the first thing I see here is it says, together they have 66 friends. So together would mean adding, so f plus p equals 66. Now there's my first equation, but I can't solve that equation because it's got 2 unknowns in it. So I'm going to have to look for another equation. And the next thing they tell me is Fred has 6 fewer than the square of the number that Pete has. So Fred, f, has 6 fewer, has is equals 6 fewer than the square of the number that Peter has. Now when you're doing fewer, which is subtract, you must be careful to get it the right way around. So the square of the number that Peter has is p squared, and then I must minus the 6 afterwards. So 6 fewer doesn't mean 6 subtract p squared, it means p squared subtract 6. Okay, so we have 2 equations, simultaneous equations, which means we've got to substitute one of the equations into the other. This equation has already got f, the subject, so what I'm going to do is replace this f with this equation here. So I'm going to put that equation into that. So the p squared minus 6 is going to replace that f there. And then rub that out. And so there's my equation, now with only one variable in it. I'm going to solve this equation. First of all, take everything over to one side, so minus 66. This is a quadratic equation, so I want to write them in the correct order. So I'm going to write my p squared first, my plus p second, and my minus 72 last. And then now I'm going to factorize this. This is a quadratic, so we know we need to factorize it. Two sets of brackets. To get p squared, I need a p at the front of both of those. 72 minus 72 could be 9 times 8. I'm going to put a plus 9 times a minus 8 to give me my minus 72. And then I'm just going to check that works. P times p is p squared, minus 8p plus 9p. Minus 8p plus 9p would be plus 1p, and then minus 72. And so either the first set of brackets has to be 0, in which case p would be minus 9. So we get p equals minus 9. Or the second set of brackets has to be 0, in which case p would be 8. P would be 8. Now obviously, however unpopular Peter is, he can't have negative 9 friends. So I'm going to eliminate that answer as being unrealistic. And so P is 8. But remember, the question didn't ask me how many friends does Peter have. It asked me how many friends does Fred have. And it says Fred has 6 fewer than the square of the number that Pete has. So Pete has 8. Square it would be 64. And then 6 fewer than 64 would be 58. So Fred has 58 friends. And so there's my question answered.